Good afternoon. My name's Alan Gamble, returning once again to look at and discuss the Aussie Box Office Charts for 2025. This weekend was weekend number 4, a long weekend for Australia Day. How did that impact the box office? Well, let's dive in and take a look. Starting at number 1, Sonic 3 holds supreme at $1.4 million, holding top spot yet again. That's week 5, dropping 35% for a current total of $27.6 million. At number 2, entering the charts, is A Complete Unknown at $1.3 million for a total of just over $2 million. At number 3, we have Mufasa, The Lion King at $1.28 million after 6 weeks of release, dropping another 35% for a current total of $25.3 million. And dropping down to number 4, we have Paddington in Peru at $1.25 million after 4 weeks, dropping another 29% for a current total of $14.7 million. Taking position number 5 is We Live in Time, bringing in another $1.14 million after 2 weeks of release, dropping only 24% in week 2 for a current total of $3.9 million. Now, Sonic stays at number 1 for a 5th consecutive week, so we'll just take a quick check at that chart we looked at last week with the Sonic franchise totals, and we can see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has just nudged over $27.6 million, putting it as a clear gross increase per movie in the franchise, going from 16 to 25 to now 27 and still rising. That is a franchise that is in good health, at least in the Australian market. The other fairly significant issue of note this weekend is the low overall box office. The box office this weekend was the lowest for the Australian domestic market for 2025 so far, which is uncommon. Normally a big public holiday long weekend would increase the box office, except Australia Day, historically speaking. So I went back and pulled some numbers. So the total domestic box office for this weekend was $11.3 million. Consider that 2 weeks previous, where last weekend was $14 million, the weekend prior was $17 million, and the weekend before that, the first weekend of January, was $19.6 million. Those are more usual numbers, so dropping down to 11.3 seems unusual, which made me curious, and I went and did some digging. Here we're taking a look at the Australia Day weekend historical box office for the last 5 years, from 2020 through to 2025. And as you can see, now remember 2020 Australia Day was prior to everything shutting down with COVID-19 and the pandemic and all shutdowns. So 2021 and 2022 were obviously lower due to cinemas being slow to reopen, people slowly getting back to them. 2023 was back to pre-pandemic levels, and 2024 and 2025 about the same, with a slight decrease year on year. So $11.3 million for this weekend is suddenly not a huge major deal. It's Australia Day long weekend. It's a very outdoorsy weekend, lots of beer and barbecues with mates, lots of probably cricket with your mates. It's a very outdoorsy, social long weekend public holiday, as opposed to a more traditional public holiday that, sure, I'll go to the movies, where Australia Day doesn't have that same vibe. And looking at the historical record, those numbers kind of align, at least over the last 5 years or so. And with all that done, let's take a look at 6 through 10 for this weekend. At number 6, we have Moana 2 moving down with $769,000 after 9 weeks of release, dropping another 35% for a total of $49.9 million. Conclave moved down to number 7 with another $668,000 after 3 weekends of release, dropping another 37% for a total of $4.8 million. Entering the charts at number 8 is Flight Risk with $596,000. Number 9 is Wicked with another $520,000 after 10 weeks of release, dropping another 38% for a current total of $47 million. And then lastly, we have Nosferatu sticking around for a 4th week with another $375,000 for a current total of $7.2 million. Now, nothing too exciting about 6 through 10. The one interesting point of note is Flight Risk entering the charts at number 8 at $596,000. Now, that would normally be considered fairly low for an opening. Now, Australia Day weekend is obviously a depressed market, but $596,000 for an opening is still fairly low, even within the Australian domestic market. However, what can be considered a positive is the director of Flight Risk, who has been touted as the director of Braveheart and other similar things, where they're not using the director's name, because the director's name is Mel Gibson, who isn't so well regarded as the box office king that he once was. But the interesting thing about this one is opening at the low number of $596,000 is still over 10 times the amount that Monster Summer opened to just several weeks ago, which was Mel Gibson's most recent movie where he's acting, he wasn't directing. Flight Risk opening at $596,000. I think Monster Summer opened at about $56,000. So you can see quite the discrepancy there, but neither being an overwhelming success. And continuing on to the top 10 of 2025, not too many changes here. As we get into the year, this will start to change up quite a bit. At number 1 holding is Paddington in Peru at $14.7 million. Nosferatu holds at number 2 at $7.2 million. Conclave continues to hold number 3 at $4.8 million. We Live in Time continues to hold at number 4 at $3.9 million. Den of Thieves 2 Pantera, which dropped out of the top 10 this week, still holds the annual top 10 at position number 5 with $2.3 million. A Complete Unknown enters the chart at number 6 with just over $2 million. Wolfman drops down a spot, 7th at $999,000. Flight Risk enters the chart at $596,000. Magic Beach holds position number 10 at $581,000. And then entering the chart at number 10 is something that didn't go as wide a release as I expected, probably due to the massive runtime. The Brutalist takes 10th spot for the year with $564,000. Now, The Brutalist opened this weekend. However, it only opened in 75 screens, and it still managed to bring in around $375,000, which wasn't enough to make it in the weekly top 10, but the entire gross that it had brought in to date is $564,000, which is enough to sneak it into 10th spot for at least a week. We'll see what happens next week with the releases that we have coming out. Alright, and let's take a quick jump over to what's new that's coming out this week, starting with the wide theatrical releases for January 30. First up, we have Baby Girl, an A24 release with Nicole Kidman playing a high-powered CEO having an affair with a younger man. So a story that has been told many times before. Will this one be any good? Time will tell. It did miss out on all the Oscar nominations. Nicole Kidman was on the outskirts of the discussion, but it appears that after nominations have come out, she did miss out this year. Next up, we have Maria, an Academy Award nominated for Best Cinematography, about the opera singer Maria Callas. So that one had a little bit of buzz too, with Angelina Jolie on the outskirts of Oscar nomination as well, but it appears she has also missed out. And finally, for the wide releases coming up is 10 Lives, which is an animated comedy about a pampered cat who gets down to his last life. So if there's any lingering school kids, that one will shoot up the charts. But with school holidays ending, I don't expect that one to blow the roof off the box office next weekend. Moving across to the limited releases for 30th of January, so checking your smaller cinemas or more restricted time sessions, we have Companion, which is about a weekend getaway turns bloody and violent when a subservient android that's built for human companionship goes haywire. Again, another concept we've seen done many, many times before. A lot recently, over the last couple of years, there has been many movies along these lines with this premise, but will it be good? Well, time will tell. And then finally, we have Oshi no Ko, The Final Act. But speaking of things, we can wonder whether it will be good or not. This is a live-action remake of a well-regarded manga series, which do not have the greatest track record. How will this one do? Time will tell. It seems to be fairly well received so far, but who knows with the manga crowd. And lastly, taking a quick look at what's upcoming on the TV / streaming platforms. On January 28th, we have a new series on Hulu and alternatively Disney Plus in Australia. We have the new series of Paradise, which is about a Secret Service agent assigned to the protection detail of a former president, but that's created by Dan Fogelman. That's a pretty well-regarded name in the industry. Done quite a few interesting, good things over the years. A few misses as well, but we'll see how this one goes. On January 29th, we have Mythic Quest returning for Season 4 on Apple TV+. That is one where I believe I watched the first couple of seasons, and it is really quite good. It was one of the early Apple TV successes about a game dev studio that is run by a guy that has all the ego of a tech industry savant. And then finally, on the 30th of January, returning for Season 2, is The Recruit on Netflix, which I enjoyed Season 1. It did take a while to find its feet, but it eventually did find the right balance between action and comedy that it was going for. In the early episodes, it was really struggling to decide whether it was a comedy or whether it was an action drama or whether it was more serious. It eventually found its happy balance, but I don't blame people if they tuned out before that point. But it's returning for Season 2, so we'll see if it picks up and continues the momentum that it finished Season 1 with. And lastly, wrapping up with the Cinechums Movie Challenge, putting this at the end so you can skip it or close the video if you're not interested. I always am, and I like having a chat about the movies that I watched. So this week for the challenge was Best Supporting, so Best Supporting Actress or Actors in any movie that had been nominated for those Academy categories. I ended up with 5 due to the long weekend, the Australia Day long weekend. And those movies were Lady Bird from 2017, a really nice, heartfelt coming-of-age story, nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Laurie Metcalf. Then moving on was Casablanca from 1943, which was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Claude Rains. I finally watched Casablanca, and it was very, very good. A lot of older movies don't necessarily hold up in modern sense, and sometimes they're a bit slow or a bit theatre in their portrayal of stiff acting. This was actually really tight. The script was really tight. It really moved. I didn't check my phone once. That's an endorsement of quality where not every movie from the 40s holds up to that regard. Next up was The Untouchables from 1987 with Best Supporting Actor for Sean Connery, which was a crime drama set in the 1930s during Prohibition in America with the fall of Al Capone. It was one that I've never seen before, like these other two. And yeah, it was pretty solid. Next up was 2011's Moneyball with Best Supporting Actor for Jonah Hill. Moneyball is an all-time favorite for me. I've watched it numerous times, and given that it was in this category and I did good work watching older movies off my watch list, I allowed myself a rewatch of Moneyball. Although my last rewatch was in 2020, so quite a few years ago now. And then lastly was 2024's Wicked with the Best Supporting Actress nomination of Ariana Grande. That was a very long movie, 2 hours, 43 minutes, I believe. But it was solid. Like, it moved pretty well for the first couple of acts. It did slow down in the third as they were setting up the sequel, the part 2, that is due out next year, I believe. But yeah, it was a good one to see the current year Oscar buzz. Production design was phenomenal. I'm not sure I would not have it nominated for every category like it is, but it was there and it has been done. So that's one off the list. And taking a look at this week's Cinechums movie challenge for week 5. Everything the box office reporting is week 4 because this challenge started a week early. However, this week's challenge is a short movie, which is a fun, interesting idea where you can have movies with short in the title, variations thereof, like Get Shorty or The Big Short, Short Term 12. Big Short and Short Term 12 I've already watched recently. Movies featuring a character named Short or Shorty, or derivatives thereof. Movies starring an actor named Short, so Martin Shaw is the obvious one. Anthology films made up of a series of short films. Movies that take place over a short span of time, like real-time storytelling, Run Lola Run or Lock. And movies about a commodity in short supply. So my plan is to take the other approach that is also flagged, is short movies that have a short runtime. So I'm limiting the runtime to 90 minutes or less. So 91 minutes is unacceptable. It is too long for this challenge. So I have a few on my list. Things like Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which is a movie about a 2-minute time loop, which is a very short concept. It also only goes for 71 minutes. I have Rope, which is set in real time over the space of under 90 minutes. Cleo from 5 to 7, which the entirety of the movie takes place from 5 to 7. It's right there in the name, and it goes for a perfect 90 minutes. As well as My Dinner with Andre, which takes place... It's a longer movie, but it is a movie that is taking place over one dinner. And Falling Down, which I think takes place over the course of a day. Rashomon is another Akira Kurosawa movie I'm yet to see, so maybe that's on there as well, which clocks in at 1 hour 28 minutes, which is 2 minutes under my cutoff time. Alright, and that's it for me this week. Short and sweet. Hopefully we have some things upcoming in the next couple of weeks that should enable me to get on some reviews. That would be fun. Not next week. There's nothing really that floats my boat next week, but the week following that we have September 5, which is definitely on my radar to catch. And then the following week, the big one that obviously has a lot of eyes is Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy, and Captain America Brave New World. We'll see if we can catch those and pop up a review on the channel. But that's it for me this week. Have a good one.